I just hit record and I just found out they put Snoop Dogg in Warzone. Anyway, we're talking about the Paris Eternal. They're sticking with this traditional EU type team. Let's go over the kept, lost, and added players. They've kept Naga, Kaan, Dan, Dredro, and Vestola, who left the team and then joined again. They lost Onigod, Suna, Elivote, and Neptuno. Neptuno has gone to Valorant, and he's looks like he's doing pretty well over there, so I'm happy for him. They have lost Onigod, which does really suck. Suna and Elivote too. Elivote's been around the scene for a long time. They've added one player only, which is crazy, I know, for an off-season like this, going into a game 5v5. They've added Glister, which is a little strange, but also not on the surface of things. Now, they kept Naga, who has been a pretty decent projectile player. He's been around contenders and just in general in Overwatch for a long time now. 2021 was not a bad year for him. He was a star for the team at one point. I wouldn't say he fell off or anything like that. It was just kind of a middling performance. He's not been at the height of projectile DPS players in the league, but he's not been bad either. He's definitely been very serviceable and has been a star for the squad. There's been an even greater star for the squad who really turned it up, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. Glister, who's come onto the team. Remember, Shock did lose 10 players overall. Kind of insane. Glister being one of them. And for someone that was hyped up as much as he was coming into the league with his rival Sparkle, he didn't really do so hot. He fell flat at the very, very start of his career in the Overwatch League. But he did find a place in the team eventually. He was playing a lot of the Mei, which isn't really a hero that is extremely flashy. His Widowmaker wasn't crazy when he first started playing it, but then he did manage to find his groove in amongst Shock, which is a bit strange because they had 1 billion DPS players and they only fielded a couple of them, and then had Violet sometimes play DPS. It was a bit whack, let's be real. It was a bit disappointing not seeing some people like Teo as well also play. But yeah, we went over that in a Shock video. What am I talking about now? I did think English might be potentially an issue, but he has spent a lot of time around Shock, and I can't imagine it'll be too much of a problem. Plus, they have Avala, which is awesome. So her being on the team is going to be excellent communication-wise and just being a good team manager, always important. And his time on the Shock, like I said. He still has a huge potential, I think, to explode in Overwatch 2. Whether that'll actually be realized is another question, because he was very flat at the start of 2021 and like in 2020 as well. Like, oh god, it's very, very hard to say. But I do have hope, and I have hope for a lot of players that are transitioning that have maybe a mediocre mediocre rise within Overwatch 1 and didn't really hit the high highs people were expecting. I do have high hopes for a brand new game, or like a evolved game. I don't know really how to put it, in Overwatch 2. We'll have to wait and see how that goes though. Someone that doesn't really need hyping up at all going into Overwatch 2, because he did pound in Overwatch 1, was Kaan. This guy's straight monster. Was actually dominating their games, like hard carrying some of their games last year. It was insane. And Naga was seen as the star player for the team for a little while, especially with his Pharah play. And then Kaan took that limelight straight out from underneath him with his Ana play. What an absolute monster on that pick. And a player that no one really had on their radars as just being this god gamer that he turned out to be was exceptional. It was really nice to see him flourish last year. And going into a new game, it's going to be even better for them. I think their backline in general for the Paris Eternal is looking great. Dredro has stuck on the roster too, which is awesome. Again, sticking with players. What a surprise. Teams doing that, find success. Wow. Wow. Dredro is an extremely stellar main support and can play Mercy at an extremely high level. Pocketing things might be important in Overwatch 2. Considering the lack of off-tank, you're going to need to pocket your other support player, which is Kaan, which is great. Might be worthwhile doing. So that'll be interesting to see how Dredro does fit into the mix and that kind of thing. His Lucio, he's not the best Lucio player in the world, but he's definitely serviceable. You're more looking at Dredro for the Mercy. His Lucio did end up kind of peaking near the end of last season and did get a whole lot better. And that's definitely a good thing. A lot of teams right now don't really have Lucio players. So having Dredro being able to pilot Mercy to an absolute T. Plus, being a pretty good Lucio player is a good thing for the Paris Eternal. Right, now let's talk about the tanks. Another double A player in Kaan and Vestola are back at it again. They were a little bit of a weak point for the roster, I will say. Kaan especially. I wouldn't say he flourished in the Overwatch League. Sometimes he got a little bit farmed, but like I mentioned before, I do have hopes for players that didn't reach their full potential in Overwatch 1. Maybe they'll do it in Overwatch 2. Maybe I'm being a little bit too positive about these things. I'm not sure. But he was very okay. The tank line was very okay in 2021. Will it change in 2022 with Overwatch 2? Yet to be seen, but I wouldn't have all your eggs in the tanks for Paris Eternal's basket. I very much think their support line and DPS line are the ones to kind of carry the team. Another thing we got to talk about is the coaching staff. They've had a little change up there too. Now, JMac is sticking on the team, but he got a promotion. Congratulations, JMac. He's gone from assistant coach to head coach. Looking pretty good. Okay, Paris Eternal clearly having a lot of faith in the JMac. Now, they've also brought on an assistant coach with not a crazy amount of high-level experience, which does worry me slightly. Like I said, their backline, also their coaching line, is a completely Korean one. Mobogi has come from Team BM. He worked on Genji and Genji S. No, Genji A, sorry, not Genji S. If you guys kind of remember, I did a video on a long time ago, but 2020, the year for London Spitfire to go complete budget, and they picked up a lot of Career Cup players. A lot of those Career Cup players played on teams like Genji S, Genji A, Genji B, etc. And Mobogi comes from one of those teams as an assistant coach. Played on got promoted from Genji A to Genji B, and then landed himself on Team BM, and now has made his way into the league for the Paris Eternal. He has little to no coaching experience at the high level. I can imagine JMac is going to help him transition into that role nicely, but still, there is a big question mark over how well he's going to do. Maybe a fresh mind to a fresh game will ignite something in Mobogi to just be an absolute god assistant coach. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell how well they are doing behind the scenes without a direct in-look into their team house and into their, like, what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very difficult to tell sometimes, especially with assistant coaches, unless you hear it from the players who talk highly of their coaches, which most of them do. When they do give interviews and ask that kind of thing. He's had 2 seasons in Contenders, placed 4th as the highest on Team BM, and that's really about it. Like, that's the height of his coaching career for the time being. But the Paris Eternal seem to have a lot of faith in him, bringing him in as assistant coach and promoting JMac to head coach. A completely Korean backroom staff compared to what they've had in previous seasons. Now, is that going to impact the players? Not entirely sure. I can imagine Glister's going to feel a little bit more at home, especially being surrounded by JMac and Mobogi, and Avala, of course, too. But with a complete Western, the other portion of the team, which is completely Western, I can't imagine it will affect them all too much. Like, I'm sure they'll do equally as well. The only thing will be the communication issue, which Avala will iron out, I'm sure, and JMac, who has been around Western players for a fair while now, I can imagine the communication there is going to be solid anyway. So that question mark can probably be thrown out. Okay, let's look at the overall for the team. I think the Paris Eternal, they're looking good with the pickups that they make. Their backline, I'm glad they're keeping Kaan. I'm glad they're keeping Jurijo. Glister's going to be an interesting one. Will he reach a new height in Overwatch 2? That's yet to be seen. They've made some nice pickups. Will they end up doing better than they've previously done? Not sure. The biggest win for them is keeping Kaan. They have been a middle of the pack team, and I can see them continuing that way unless Overwatch 2 does something completely crazy and the team ends up popping off and they find their footing relatively quickly. I think the beginning of the season, and this is just an in general kind of point, I think the beginning of the season is going to be very dice rolly for a lot of teams who have made extremely big changes, and teams that have kept a lot of their players are probably going to do better than teams, for example, like the Shock, who have let go of 10 of their players. So I think Paris Eternal will do fairly well at the start of the season, and then probably round out in the middle of the pack once again, unless Glister reaches a new height and Naga also once again becomes a kind of this star player. Their backline, though, looking good. Their tank line has been looking a little bit weak, but tank changes as a role completely, so might suit their needs a little bit more. That was it for the Paris Eternal. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and other than that, I'll see you guys soon.